Oh, you're looking at me. There's an audience. We've got pressure. We've got pressure.
I'm just looking at you. Yeah.
Ready? Welcome to the Apex Strengthcast with your hosts, Anthony Krasner and Tyler Seabrook. Today we have Sam Hall from Adelaide on. He's down to talk about pretty much all things lifting and powerlifting.
Politics.
Yeah. I was going to say drama, but I didn't want to turn it into like drama alert on YouTube.
Yeah, they're the same thing.
And as always, this strength class is brought to you by Apex Strength training for everyone. Sam.
Yes. Hi.
How are ya?
Good. How are you?
Good. You ready to compete tomorrow?
Yeah, I am. Like, I've been gagging for it. Like, I just want to compete already.
Yeah. True. You want to be out there.
Big time. Like, so bad.
Like the message you sent me is like, dude, just let me at it.
Yeah. I'm just like, let's go.
Let's so Sam, the reason we have him on, one, he's a good friend, really good to talk to, really well spoken. He knows a lot of stuff about training science. So we're going to learn a lot, as we did last week with Samuel Skepis. But also, he has a good outlook and a good take on a lot of, issues in powerlifting and things like that in general. So this episode's actually going to be in two parts. We're going to split it down the middle because it's going to go for a while. Half this week, half next week. So the first half is just going to be getting to know Sam, what he's done, what he's about, and kind of like things like that. And the second half, which a lot of you'll be looking forward to, will be a bit more science-based, and, he can give us a lot more like detail on things we want to know and, things that he can teach us, which is what he does for work. I mean, you've been a teacher before?
Yeah, I used to be a high school teacher way back in... I have to think of this, 2013, like halfway through 2012 and then going into 2013. So I was a teacher for about 18 months before I changed into... Well, I got into personal training after that, and then...
The playground's rough, bro.
Yeah, it's rough. I had to get out of there.
School?
Yeah, high school. So I actually taught people like... look at me and immediately assume I was a PE teacher when I absolutely was not. I taught English and history, so
completely off the narrative.
It's like you're allowed to lift weights and read, right?
And do something else.
It's crazy, man.
Cool.
I know. You don't have to be a meathead.
I'm an onion. So,
why don't you start off by giving us some info on yourself, on your lifting? What are your best lifts? How long you been in the fitness industry?
Yeah, sure. I guess in the fitness industry, I've been in for 5 years. So, roughly about 5 years, I think, including this year. So I started off as a personal trainer actually in Canada, of all places. Like, I was never a personal trainer here. I was always into fitness, but, like a lot of people are, but I never really took the next step. And then I moved to Canada on a complete whim, like sold everything I had and then moved to Canada. And
it's always a smart life decision.
Well, it worked out pretty well. Started up with a big fitness chain over there and got my personal training certification and started off as a trainer, and then I've just been in it ever since. Somebody tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I wanted to be a trainer when I finished a workout one day, and I said yes, and I've been doing it ever since. So powerlifting itself I've been into for about, I want to say, 2.5 years properly now, and with an actual coach, because I was like doing programming for a while. Like, I was doing different programs like everybody does when they start off with powerlifting, like Juggernaut, Cube Method, that kind of stuff.
Method.
Oh yeah,
we all went through them.
Do you remember that tip? Just quickly, that you'll find in the podcast, as have you seen, we kind of go off on little tangents here and there, which is okay. But I've got it on good information that the people love that. From like one person. So but that's like 1 out of 4, so that's not bad, But do you remember, I remember reading in his ebook, where he had the speed day, because it's very conjugate like style.
Oh yeah.
He had a heavy day, a speed day, and a volume day rotated over 3 weeks, right? So if you had a heavy deadlift day, it's probably speed, volume week, and volume bench week. So do you remember the tips he gave in the speed for squats was to get the bar to fly off your back an inch or two?
I don't remember that, but I remember in the ebook when he talks about nutrition, and it's like one paragraph about training nutrition. It basically said like, if you want to be strong, you have to like eat big, and it's a picture of a bedspread covered in bacon and bagels and jam,
and like they drink like an ounce. That's three, like over
like
3
a
liters,
gallon.
A gallon of chocolate milk a day.
Yeah.
Right? And like, we were like, Brandon, look how strong he's squatting, like 350. Like, yeah, he knows what's up. You know, take out of the drugs. He didn't touch on the drugs.
Yeah. And then his
yeah.
knees exploded.
Yeah, and then his knees exploded, right?
He's actually a really nice guy. Like, he's a really lovely guy. Like, I've messaged him a few times, and he always replies and stuff.
I think he's changed his attitude in the last 5 years, though.
Yeah,
I think he's very...
Because he's been involved in a lot of drama in the sport.
So, I'm glad I avoid most of that bro science. I just did the bench program,
yeah,
so I didn't have to deal with the speed days, all the bro science bullshit. I just got... And I put on like 40 kilos on my bench.
Well, that's the thing.
It does work.
Because it was structured, it's going to work. But, back on what I was going to say is, he'd tell you to get the bar an inch or two off your back. And then I used to do it. Yeah. I used to do it. And then I remember I had like 160, 180 kilos slam into my neck, and I just got leveled in the squat rack in this like busy as hell gym with me and my other mates. We all got into powerlifting, so there were like 4 of us. And I just got leveled by this like 180 kilo squat. I was just like, you know, guys, I don't think this is the right thing to do anymore. Because I'm legit like, you know, the squats weren't good. They didn't look good. And I'm coming up, but it's that last like fifth of the movement. Just to look at, I'd launch it as high as I could, and yeah, just landed wrong. Like I wasn't talking even an inch, but that's still not good for you. But yeah, just like it got demolished. So that's kind of when I was like, hey, maybe Brandon Lilly doesn't know everything.
Yeah.
And then I got on Chico.
Well, and like my big thing as well, like I was with that style of programming for a long time, but then like I kept getting ribs popping out, and I kept getting like my SI messing up on me and stuff. I was like, oh, like this sucks. Like it wasn't even necessarily the programming, but I knew that I had to get a coach because it, you know, just wasn't working for me. So I ended up working with a really good coach for like I did a competition on my own, and then actually I did 2 competitions on my own. I got a coach when I moved back to Australia from Canada, which was last year, and then did 2 more competitions after I got my next competition tomorrow, and then I did 1 more competition in between where you guys handled for me, actually, which is where I know you guys from, because that was, really awesome of both of you when you did that. Yeah, it was a good day at the office.
Yes, it was.
You did well. I just remember you unracking your like 182 bench, and you were shaking like hell, and I was like, there's no way he's going to get this.
Like, it gets better than that. So I was helping him warm up, and he gets under 60 kilos, and he's fucking shaking. And I was like... But then he did like 100, 120, 140, and I was like, just kept the same speed, but just shaking the whole time. And I was like, this must be just a thing.
I remember being convinced that he wouldn't get it, and then it just came up well. I was like, holy shit, I guess he just shakes a lot. Like,
yeah.
No, I legitimately do. So I've always gotten... Yeah, exactly. Because I'm constantly terrified. I have like a benign tremor, I guess, which is like my dad has it, and like... both my sisters and my brother, they all have it, and it's like I can't keep my hand steady at all. And of course, like now that I say it, it's pretty steady.
Yeah, I'm like, it's pretty more steady than mine.
That's pretty steady.
Yeah.
Listen to a lot of Eminem.
Yeah, there's vomit on my sweater. But no, I've actually started taking like a ton more magnesium, like a lot of magnesium. It's gotten a lot better since. But yeah, I still shake like crazy. Yeah. As far as my best numbers go, I'm looking. Currently, best squat is 225. I compete at 105 body weight, so 225 bench is 182.5 when we could do 0.5s.
Strong.
And deadlift was 257.5, so I totaled 665 at my last meet, which was good.
Which was
good
third meet?
Yeah, third meet.
Yeah, that's some good lifts. And like, just to clarify, you know, it's not one of those things where you've done a couple of comps and then you're a powerlifting coach. Like, you've been in the fitness industry for a long time, because I know people like to call that out, right? Like, oh, they've done 1 or 2 comps, they think you're a coach, but you do program for strength, but you're like, you know a lot about like general fitness as well. So that's the majority of people you work with, right? Are like people that want to get stronger, but they have different kind of goals. They're not looking to, you know, go put up a 300 kilo squat. Like,
out of all the people that I train, one is a power lifter, and I like train quite a few different people. Like a lot of my clients are one-on-one, but like one is a power lifter, and she's awesome. But the majority of the people that I work with are John and Jane Doe that just want to do stuff pain free.
Do you want to work with powerlifters more going forward, or are you happy to kind of like have a nice middle ground, get a nice mix going?
So like powerlifters or like people with...
You're right. I'm just like...
I'm so sorry. People with more... People with more of an athletic background are cool because like when you're a coach, when you're a trainer, it's awesome when you can just communicate on a different level to people that have been doing things for a little longer, when people have a different level of experience, and your cueing changes because I can say things. I don't really have to break it down as much or like compare it to something else. I can literally say like, move your scapula here, and they'll be like, oh, okay, boom, and they'll just do it, and that's really fun. And it's fun to have clients that are like, make me strong. I'm like, all right, sweet, this is really cool.
Yeah, we've always said that it's easier to coach someone who has like a really good body awareness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because they can just, their form just goes straight into what you want. You tell them, they do it.
Well, here's the thing, like with you, I coach Sam. I have now for one training cycle and disc comp. He's doing really well. We're still figuring out the best way he responds to things as you do as a coach with a new athlete, right? You don't know everything the first cycle with them. It takes time. But what makes it really easy is I can give him 1 or 2 cues, and he's just like, oh, yeah, I know, I felt that. Yeah, I'll fix that. And it's just, that's the end of it. Where someone new, you're like, you need to just, they'll be like, what's that?
Yeah.
So you need to break everything down into really simple forms, but also get a lot of information in that. It makes it hard, right? Especially online coaching.
Yeah, I think like you have to use a lot more external cues when you're dealing with like other people. Like a lot of the time you have to compare movement to something else, like to something else entirely. Like you can't tell somebody to depress their scapula. Like you have to tell them to put their shoulders in their back pockets, or like get your shoulders to touch your bum or something like that, and then they'll be able to understand it. But then a lot of the time, like it's not even awareness that people suffer from, because I think if I said to literally anyone, like if I pulled somebody off the street right now and I told them to put their chest up, they would know how to put their chest up. But that's very rarely the issue. One of the biggest issues is that these people, like, number one, when you put somebody under load, a lot of that stuff goes out the window because they're so worried about staying alive that they're not thinking, you know, with that like logical part of their brain. They're just like, oh my God, I have load on my back, let's go. But a lot of the time, like, you have a lot of other limiting factors to people's movement that you have to consider when you are dealing with like very untrained people, because you're looking at like a lot of not only like untrained major muscle groups, but like a lot of the smaller musculature that can just really mess with people's movement. Like I can't tell somebody to pick their chest up if they have extremely weak pec minor, lats, serratus anterior, like that. If they're like brutally protracted, they know what chest up is, but they can't physically do it. So you have to really strip everything back for those people. I think that's a mark of a good coach, though, or a good trainer. You know, just coach, good PT, someone that's like well established in the industry and is going to be around for a long time. Is you see a lot of, like, to use powerlifting because we're all powerlifters, you see a lot of coaches only work with high level lifters, right? And they're easy to coach, like, because they understand all this stuff, but and they understand, you know, you tell them, hey man, you need to retract your scaps, and oh cool, I know what that is. But it's really hard to coach beginners, and it's even harder to be good at coaching beginners as a whole, because you need to explain things so differently, and there's so many different issues. Like, you know, they're gonna have massive points that are lagging. Yeah. Whereas, you know, most elite level lifters might have 1 or 2 points that are lagging, but that's about it.
Yeah, even intermediate, same thing. Like, they have a few things going wrong on a squat, but it's like it's only a few things going wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so like, I think anyone can coach someone intermediate or above, but like, it takes a special person to be able to coach. And someone that knows what they're talking about in and out to coach like a lot of beginners and just, you know, general, you know, Jane Doe's off the street. Like, so credit to you, because I know you do.
Yeah, thanks.
I know you do a lot of that, but you also do like, we talk a lot, but even over the last 3 days, talking to you, you realize that you have a big understanding on these things and that you're so good at getting across. And like, there's no doubt, you, like I see on Instagram stories, you can explain that in a simple way as well, which is really hard to do. It's really hard to know something so in depth, but explain it in simple terms.
I think a lot of that, so like, when you become an English teacher for like secondary school students, you have to get really good at tricking people into learning things, like really good. It's like, how can I like legitimately trick these kids into learning the thing that I want? Like, what's the easiest way that I can describe it? And actually, one of the best guys that I ever worked both with and for, his name's Greg Merritt. He's PT regional out in Edmonton, like smart guy. He basically said, like, if you can explain something to a 4-year-old and a college level professor, if you can say one thing and have them both understand it, then that's what you want. And that's kind of like how I always try to think of how to explain something, because I know, like, I really love the science behind movement and I love a lot of that, but I also know that that's not necessarily going to make me a better communicator. What I need to do a lot of the time is try and find the middle ground and have people get that sort of aha moment. Oh, yep, like, okay, that makes sense. And that's, yeah, more or less what I'm striving to do. So I remember teaching Shakespeare to kids by showing them The Lion King and stuff. You know, like Lion King is Hamlet. Yeah.
Just like
it is Hamlet.
Okay.
Yeah. And like 10 things I hate about you.
I don't actually like The Lion King.
What?
Yeah.
What the hell?
He's talking shit. Like,
No, like legit.
what do you mean?
I just...
Okay, what about, like...
face the camera and tell them what you mean.
Right there.
Oh man, it's pressure.
Face it down.
I don't like Star Wars at all or The Lion King. They're two things that I won't sit down and watch ever.
Okay.
This is a lot of silence in here. Right?
Yeah, I'm like, I have to go back to the drawing board.
You're like back to the drawing board with
so
Apex strength.
Yeah, sure. You've seen 10 things I hate about you, right?
I literally watched that 3 days ago.
Yeah, it's a good
so
movie.
that's The Taming of the Shrew.
The missus chose to watch it. All right.
No, Tyler, what's wrong with liking things they have about you, bro?
No, it's actually great.
It's a good movie.
It is, yeah.
But yeah, so it's like a lot of the time, people, especially like the people that I train, like I said, they're John and Jane Doe. They don't want to know, or like they want to know the science, but they, like everybody wants it
in the most basic.
Yeah, in relatable terms, and it's not basic in a patronising sense. It's just basic in a digestible sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be overcomplicated.
You don't eat a
That's
whole
the thing.
steak at once.
Yeah, it's actually unnecessary, because then if you overcomplicate things, it's too much to remember, right? Where they're going to remember very specific points on how to fix whatever's going wrong.
Yeah, and I think like when you start off with training people, where I feel when it comes to communication, like imagine that your brain essentially has like a certain amount of shelf space. Like if we took this table as having a shelf space for information that you can store in your brain, and when you start, your shelf space is very limited. So you can probably only hold on to like 3 things. And in like terms of statistics of retention of information, if you give somebody one thing to remember, they got about a 90% chance of retaining that information. 2 things, it's about 66%. And 3 things, you're looking at, it drops to like 30% or less.
Yeah.
So...
Sorry, what was the second thing? No.
It doesn't matter.
It's exactly why, and you pull people up about this, so when you get a beginner, right, and you're trying to teach them new form, and other people decide they're the coaches now, they're gonna start coaching, so that they come in and they're trying to fix this thing, but you're like, we're trying to fix these things first. You can't fix everything at once.
Yeah, like, you can't.
I tear people apart, and Tyler's seen it in the gym for that, because people will come in out of nowhere and go up to a lifter that's doing one spot, and they'll be like, oh, your heels are coming up a little bit. And then that person then is just focusing on their heels and everything else goes to shit. And you're just like, dude, like I've been working at this person for a month. Yeah. We've just got this squat looking good. That is small potatoes compared to everything else that's going on. And now all they can focus on is their heels. And then, you know, it also it potentially creates a bit of mistrust because of, why didn't you tell me about my heels? Well, because, you know, your heels coming off just slightly, and not even heels, it's the soles of your shoes, isn't a big deal, you know, but your knees touching it. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, you in terms of addressing things with people, especially new people, you will often get clients with like very poor movement, with almost like no awareness of their own and like any motor skill at all. And it's not their fault, and that's fine, but there are things you need to correct straight away. And often those are not the things that people think they are, because people think you need to you need to stop their knees from touching. Like, that's bad. But take a step back. Is it just a matter of you telling them to push their knees out, or is there something else actually going on? Like, you need to
100%.
look outside of that. So, yeah, in terms of prioritizing what you need to fix with people, you often have, like, I just say to everyone, you have big rocks, little rocks, sand, and water. And you just work your way down through that. So let's take care of the big stuff first, and then we'll get to the rest later.
Yeah. Now, I want to go into opening some gyms and your experience with that, right? So, like, we've opened a club. You know, that was, like, stressful in some ways, but that was pretty cruisy as well. Like, you know,
It's a step-by-step, baby steps thing.
I think you'd agree, Tyler. It actually wasn't as hard as we thought it was going to be, in the way that, like, there were a lot of little parts, but it was all very manageable.
It's like hard, but then over a course of 6 months, then it breaks it up. Because you try to do it all in a week, then you're looking at
and
a hard
you know, the
fucking
thing
job.
is though, like, you also, with, say, opening here, you look, so I remember when we got all the things we needed to open the club, right? Remember we got that list from the council?
Yes.
And we were like, holy shit, there's like 15 things here. But they're all like 5-minute things.
Yeah.
It's literally going to a website, getting some information. Like, it's all pretty easy. But I imagine now with a big club, right, when you're talking, you know, one club has 4,000 members, there'd be a lot of moving parts.
Is it that, is there, you had a specific job within a group of people doing it? So, how fast did you do it? Like, how fast could you get a place up and running?
All things opening gym.
Okay. Normally, we would go once. So a lot of the time, everything we were doing. So my title was personal training education specialist, which is a very long title. I'm aware.
It's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. But it was pretty cool to say to people. So like, a lot of the time, construction is happening simultaneously while you are doing everything behind the scenes. So you might be. My job in and of itself was to train the PT manager, like hire and train the PT manager with the help of the fitness regional, hire all of the PTs. So that was anywhere from 10 to 20 PTs per club, depending on the size of the club. And those were people that we would literally like pull off the street sometimes. Like, some people were
Homeless person.
I like the cut of your jib. Like, you're hired.
Hey man, that's a nice beard.
He looks shredded. Come on. So, like, a lot of people, like, because the personal training certification in Canada, it is easier to get. Like, one of them certainly is. The others, I argue, are easier to get than the one in Australia. It just takes less time. So you could hire people.
Dropouts here, simply because of the time put in for it.
Yeah, a lot of it is. So you could hire people. Like, I would literally go into gyms, find people working out, and I would hire them as personal trainers. And then it was looking after them for. We'd normally go from like nothing to open in about 10 weeks,
Jesus.
Roughly. From nothing to open in 10 weeks. That's like. We'd be hiring the club. We would train all of the staff. We would help them hit all of their KPIs, like all of their personal training starter packages. We would book those packages, and then we would have like...
Did you pay for that?
What do you mean?
Pay for their course and everything?
Oh, no. So they pay for it separately. So they, like, under the company could insure them for their first 3 months. And then if they weren't certified after that, they
So they had 3 months. They could be a trainer with no certificates.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
how it
what you're
works
saying
over
is
there.
You're
Yeah.
single-handedly like part of the reason that the fitness industry has gone to shit.
Hey man, I was just trying to make a living.
Got to make
Yeah.
a dollar.
I was good at what I did.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's so different to. I see Janine's like, oh man, you're like burning him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing in the liquor industry as well with that.
Yeah.
RSA, you don't have to have it straight away.
Yeah,
even though
okay.
you're
They'll
meant to be
float
responsible
you.
service
Well,
for
no, I'm
alcohol.
only joking, but it is completely like in England.
Yeah,
when
it
I
is
was there,
very
you didn't
different.
need the certificate, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like here, I think it's pretty regulated, which is
Yeah,
good.
you must have
Well,
your
it
certificate.
kind of makes sense as to like how there's so many bad PTs in conventional gyms, because there is. Like I trained at the Genesis before I
Yep.
opened a club here with Anthony, and man, just seeing some of the PTs there, and I was just like, oh, it's cringeworthy. Like,
That's the issue. Whether it's a weekend course or it's a 6 month course, I remember doing the Cert 3 and 4, and it was just like I didn't learn anything. I learned how to like retain clients.
Yeah.
That's what they were like. You never tell them they're doing anything wrong. You just like always positive reinforcing. You're like,
yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah. Like, oh, okay. So as long as they're paying me, it doesn't matter if they're actually doing that well. And they're like, it's more just, just don't injure them and keep them happy.
Which also doesn't make sense at all, because if you have a client and you're like, yeah, man, you're perfect and you're awesome, it's like, well, why are they going to pay you then? Like, why are they going to give you money to fix them if they're already fixed?
Like,
I'm
got to
great.
really tear them down and keep them paying you.
Well, it's like, just shred them. But it's like Mr. Burns when he gets told that like all of the diseases inside his body are in perfect harmony with each other. He's like, oh, so I'm indestructible. Like, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So we would also have like a week that was called PT Base Camp, and I would train in 4 days. So it was 4 days with me in a classroom setting, and I would take all of my trainers. So let's say about 15 brand new trainers, like brand new. And I would have to make sure that they were essentially like fully functional trainers by the end of that week. So you know how to sell, you know how to assess, you can take people through a consultation. And a lot of that was role-playing, scripting, everything like that. And then the following week was in the gym. Normally we had access to the gym. Sometimes we didn't. We'd have to make stuff up on the fly. But yeah, in the gym, putting it into practice, getting used to all that. And then the doors were open, and I'd look after their success for probably about, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Make sure that everything was going well, and that they were gaining clients. And then I'd jet off to another part of Canada, and I'd do it all again.
Now, were these guys hourly, or were they commission like yearly?
That's an interesting one. So this company got in like a fair bit of trouble for it recently. They have cleaned it up, but so essentially what would happen is that they do work off of commission. They would get an hourly, which was like $10 an hour for consultations, as long as they were like starter packs. But if you were on the floor, if you were prospecting for clients, you weren't making any money,
which is pretty standard. Like,
I mean that's what I had to do anyway. Like I was used to
you
it.
Pay your rent, and then you're literally renting the gym floor, and then however much you make is on you.
You're essentially a contractor, but I think where it got a bit murky was that you were considered an employee, not a contractor over there.
For the gym as well.
It was really complex, honestly. Like it's
better journalism.
It's a pretty dark rabbit hole there.
Conventional gyms uncovered.
But I remember
we've got Chris Hansen here. Actually.
Yeah. Just take a seat.
Yeah.
So when I started as a PT, I started in a brand new gym, and I had the club opening team open up our gym, and then that's what made me want to do it. They were all really cool people. One of them became my client when I first started there, but I was pushing inhuman hours for next to no money just to make myself successful. But that's just what you do, I guess.
Was that, did you say, partly your gym? Do you open it with somebody, or is you just working where you
so the team that I was on, we would have, so there was myself, PT specialist, but then you would also have like a club services specialist who would train people on all of the white tape stuff, how to use the computer systems, everything like that. And then you'd also have sales specialists who would train the membership consultants how to sell. So I trained the PTs how to sell, and then the membership people obviously looked after the membership people. They would do that. So we had aggressive targets a lot of the time. So for us to actually open doors without delay, we had to sell, I think it was, we had to have 80% of our projected year-to-date membership, like, before opening.
What was that?
That's crazy.
Like, some of the numbers were big, like very big.
200,000 members?
So the biggest gym I opened, it was the biggest gym in Western Canada. It was one of the final gyms that I opened, that I think we opened with, like, I want to say close to 5,000 members.
That's crazy.
It was like 60,000 square feet, like
this
the
is what
most
really
colossal
turned
gym.
us away from opening a conventional gym. So we were thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
And then we've even thought about it again. And we're just like, it just doesn't make sense, like, money-wise, right? So you, like, all right, for a cheap conventional gym, you're talking like 150, 200,000 for us if we go into a warehouse, not building our own or anything.
Yeah.
which is, in investing, it's a small amount of money, but the potential for reward, especially in today's day and age, with all these gyms that are charging $10 a week, just isn't there.
No.
So to break even, you need 200 members.
Yeah.
Like, from the get-go, or else you're just hemorrhaging money. And it's just not feasible for, like, unless you have these big gyms like Genesis, unless you have the money to market and the people to pay to go out and sign up.
You need some serious capital behind you to, like, be able to
back it up.
Do it that way, because if you're looking at a gym, like, you shouldn't be just anyone opening up a gym that charges $10 a week, because you have to consider, like, honestly, you have to consider the type of people that's going to attract and the longevity of your equipment, like, everything like that. Like, what type of gym culture are you going to have?
And
like,
at least
a lot of that.
Victoria, all the mainstream gyms are like that. The powerlifting gyms that are different, but like mainstream gyms are like that now. It's all like no lock-in contracts, $10, no sign-up fee, $10 a week, like things like that. And just being, on our own, like, you can't do that. That's why we always wanted a powerlifting club, but we always thought, hey, maybe we'll open something bigger, and then we're like, oh, it's really not that feasible. Like, we could open a bigger club, a powerlifting specific gym, but it's actually completely different.
There's a right size, and then there's just going too big unnecessarily.
Yeah. Which is even Rob Wilkes is like, man, we opened at a good size. Like, it's manageable. The overheads are low, and then you just grow from that.
Yeah. Because a lot of people, I guess, they go too big too early. Overheads are too much. They lose their house. So, how the hell did they get 80% of their clients before they even opened?
So, I guess they look at the demography around the gym, and then they estimate based on averages how many members they're likely to gain within a calendar year.
Yep.
And then they take 80% of that, and then that's basically like, we need to hit this to make sure that this gym is economically viable for its first year, and if we're not hitting this, then we're going to delay the opening of the gym.
Yes.
Now, do these gyms make a lot of money?
Oh yeah. Yeah, okay. So my first month in that gym, and granted I was only overseeing it, but like I take a lot of pride in seeing my trainers do well. Like, I worked with well over 100 trainers during my time.
People up from,
like they were good guys. Like, a lot of them did quite well, and it's good to see. But we sold, that particular gym did $248,000 in personal training alone in the first month.
Jesus.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Now, these areas where they're not very, like, dense with gyms?
Yes. Not dense with good gyms. It was, like, very strategically placed to be a feeder, because there are a lot of other little towns around. Now, if you opened up a gym, let's say in the middle of, I don't know, like where I used to live, Calgary, if you opened up another gym in the middle of Calgary, there's no way you're going to hit those numbers, because they've already reached a bit of a saturation point. But if you open it somewhere, Field of Dreams style, if you open it somewhere where they are nowhere near a saturation point, then you're going to do very well. However, will they do well outside of the first 12 months once people go through the first 12 months of their membership? That's hard to say. It really depends on how much effort has been put into the gym by the staff, to build a culture. I think you find a lot of the gyms that are built further out that do very well very quickly, outside of their first 1 to 2 years, the membership base drops off very sharply. Yeah. Whereas if you're somewhere with a higher saturation point, you probably won't make as much money immediately, but you will likely be more sustainable long term, so long as you can make it outside of your first year.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And now, one thing, like, people don't realize is when you open up a gym like this, you say you got 5,000 members from the get-go, but you're not expecting 5,000 members to actually use a facility, right?
No. I mean, like, what is, like, the statistic is somewhere in the vicinity of, like, out of all your membership that purchases 12-month memberships, it's around like 27 to 30% of those people will not set foot in the gym once.
That's a scary statistic.
Yeah, it's true. See, that's why, like, as well, like, that's what got me so fired up about personal training, because, like, the average per gym visit per month was like 1.3 times per month. Like, if you take all the people that didn't show up to any of their stuff, any of their training.
So they're all zeros.
Yep. So they're all zeros. Then you take the people that are there 4 or 5 times a week, and the people that are there 4 times a week represent about 5% of your gym population.
That's crazy.
5%.
Yeah.
Take everybody else, and then your average gym visitation is about 1.3 times per month. So that's why I was so fired up about personal training. I'm like, as soon as you start with personal training, if they're only training with you twice a week, then they're now training with, like, they're now visiting the gym 8 times a month. And that's like bucking the trend immediately. And that's like bare minimum investment in personal training.
Yes.
So that's why I was so huge on it. Like,
you're actually getting people in there to actually
because
utilize
like,
what they've paid for, but two, like, bettering their
and
life.
you know what? Like, even if they are receiving some questionable, weird training on like whack Bosu ball stuff. Yeah, you took it out of my mouth. Bosu balls, don't do them. But still, like,
hey man, haven't you done a Max?
Yeah,
dude, my adductors on
so
fire.
Stable. You're so
Literally.
stable. Yes.
Yeah, I tore it.
You know what? Like, even if they are doing that, it's still affecting people in a more or less positive way. Now, are there better ways to go about their training? Yes, absolutely. Like, your personal training certification only gives you permission to participate in the industry. That's not the end of your education. You just got the green light to get going. But if they're visiting 8 times a month instead of 1.3 times a month, or 0 times a month, then that's a good thing. That's like a good thing that I want people to do.
That's like I constantly endorse. I'm like, look, you don't have to do powerlifting. Just do something. I don't care what sport you're doing as long as you're being active, because that's going to be more beneficial for you than you just sitting sedentary at home and eating
100%.
shit. Right?
Big time.
And that's why we push as well. Like, even if, and that's something we got a lot of people here. Like, I reckon it's a good like 50-50 split. People that compete and don't compete that train here, right? But they're getting stronger, but that's not the reason we push them to train so hard. Like, to get crazy PBs, that's just the a means to an end. They can track progress that way. It keeps them motivated. Really, we're doing so they they're healthier. If you're training 3 days a week and you want to get strong, you want to hit that PR. Use it as a tool. They won't drink as much. They won't eat as much fast food. They want to take better care of their body. So like,
success is addictive, right? And success leaves clues. So as soon as people start finding that success, and as soon as people start feeling that kind of sensation of winning, which people don't often feel, because everything in society tells us how much we suck. And it's like, you're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too ugly, nobody will ever love you, eat this, drink this, go have a party, like, go do this, go do this. And it doesn't make any sense to me. So it's, so like,
it's going to be like, it's right, man.
That's right, man.
No, it's not okay.
Look, you're going to do good tomorrow.
Yeah. It's important for those people to come in, and I think, PBs, they're great, but really they're just indicative and symbolic of the work that you have put into bettering yourself. Like, that's just one little aspect of it. Everything that you're doing is so much bigger.
When you can measure and track progress, it's the best way to keep motivated, right?
Yep.
So use it as saving as an example. Well, last month you had 0 in your savings account. This month you have 800. 12 months down the line, well, a year ago you had 800. Now you've got 5,000. So things like that, where you can measure progress, where you can measure it, and that's the best way to keep yourself motivated. That's why we use an app where they can look at all their training, they can look at their past PBs, and then because if you come in, you're having a shit session, but you're like, oh man, my squat's gone up 15 kilos since I started training here. Like, that's going to push you through those hard sessions. It's one of the tools to use to motivate people.
That's why rep PBs are somewhat important. Like, people shit on them and people post them on Instagram, right? But it's like, if you have a bad comp and you don't PB on anything, doesn't mean there wasn't progress there.
Yeah.
And that's why rep PBs are
can you touch Tyler
somewhat
now, please?
Yeah.
Okay, man.
Tyler now.
Who hurt you? Yeah.
That's right, man. You do
Gravity, man.
Yeah.
Gravity. Fucking bitch.
Everyone knows gravity's just heavier on comp day.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
It's true.
Just got to make sure it's not there in comp day.
You've got to peak somehow. Like, you've peaked really well this time, but you got to find a way tonight to wreck it. Like, go out on the town.
Drink 10 beers.
Yeah, get after it.
Well, no, that worked.
The Nick Reed method. Yeah.
We had this lifter, Nick Reed, and I'll let you tell the story because
he was actually there when you were there. He was competing. That's how we met you, because I was taking Nick Reed through his comp at the Hawthorn comp.
Right.
And that's Nick. And the first comp that he did where I helped him out, So I just like did his numbers and everything.
Same thing we did for you.
Same thing we did for you.
Yeah.
I was just talking to him, and he was like, I was like talking about what he did like yesterday in terms of how he prepped for it for the week, and he's like, well, I had 10 beers with my mate yesterday and watched the rugby, and I was like, excuse me, like what? And then he PB'd on like everything, and did a huge total PB,
that carb up,
and I was
man.
just like, this doesn't make any sense.
Just that carb up, bro. It's because he usually drinks like 30 beers.
Yeah, so it's like it's 10 beers to him is actually not like
like one
it's
beer.
not going to rattle him. So it's like
Before my first comp, we had like 2 pints before bed, and that's probably the best sleep I've ever had before a comp. It wasn't much, but it was just like enough to calm the nerve.
Yeah.
I don't recommend that. Like, I don't drink, but back
That's
then,
like
it got me to sleep.
like Chris Duffin doing the whiskey shots right before going for a big pull.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do that. You can't actually do that. But
I'm actually curious in your opinion on how much alcohol inhibits performance.
oh,
I'm drunk right now.
yeah, what? Look, like it's definitely an inhibitor of performance, in my opinion, from what I've read, from what I know of it. Like, and it depends on what type of performance. Like Chris Duffin, he's a big fan of the shot of whiskey before going out for a pool in the feds that you can get away with that.
Yeah.
Because it's a depressant of the nervous system, so a lot of people are very shaky when they go up for that pool.
It's different when it's like you're using that drug then and there.
Yeah, on the
versus
spot. Prolonged.
A week before it, for a whole week of drinking and then
Also,
trying to
like,
compete, it would rattle you.
Shooting, it's really like
Settles,
it's against the law, against the rules in shooting, because you don't shake as much, you're going to be more accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my opinion on that, in like strictly from the people that I work with, I guess, because I don't work with too many powerlifters, so I can't really comment on it.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at like what it does to you hormonally, I just don't think the juice is necessarily worth the squeeze. So it's like, I'm not saying never drink ever, because I like having a drink here and there. I'm not a big drinker by any means, but I enjoy it sometimes. But when you look at things like its relationship to the production of mTOR in your body, which is essentially like your muscle building hormone, its relation to T3, where it like completely down-regulates T3.
Yeah.
Up-regulates anti-T3, down-regulates, I'm fairly sure down-regulates testosterone production, increases cortisol production, and then like you a shot, like if you wake up and you just shot.
Layman terms, your body starts processing the alcohol being a poison to the body and stops with recovery, so you won't recover as well, right?
Yeah, because like alcohol is going to place stress on an already stressed system. So if your body now has to put energy into dealing with the alcohol in its system, like you can only tolerate a finite amount of stress at any one given point, physical or mental. Everybody has a breaking point. So if you're adding stress into that, then you're just fatiguing an already fatigued system. And if your body now has to put energy into getting rid of alcohol as opposed to allowing itself to recover for more physical stress from training, then realistically you're just setting your training back by, I don't even know, but I would imagine a few weeks every time you have a large-ish night on it.
Here's the thing, like, I used to drink a lot every day. Like, I was a big drinker up until over a year ago when I stopped drinking. Massive drinker, but something like my sleep's better. I mean, this is drinking every day though, right? Like every night. But sleep's better, recovery is definitely better. I can eat more calories. Even when I cut down to 120s, I couldn't eat as many calories because alcohol, right? And just couldn't take in as many calories, so I'd stop eating as much to drink more. But also things like I don't get as many I'd always complain about my pecs and my hamstrings. Remember, like fairly frequently, and it was never bad, but I'd always have a little tweak here, a little tweak there.
We don't know whether that was form or that was alcohol.
But that's the thing, my squat form wasn't that bad back then. And
there's a lot of variables.
But that's the thing, though. Definitely, though, my training's a lot better now since I quit drinking. And even mentally, you can go into a session, you can train harder for longer. You don't feel beat up and worn out all the time. You can actually put some intensity into your training. Because I used to feel like shit 24/7.
Yeah.
But it's because I train hard. Well, no, it's because you drank 20 beers a night.
He still broke records, though.
Yeah, well.
You're like beer muscles.
Yeah, always dry.
Just got after it. Didn't care. Yeah.
I could do 340.
Yeah. And a lot of the time, people people drink more than they think they drink, definitely. And again, like I'm not going to say do not drink at all, but should you probably drink less if you want to see better results? I don't think that's an outrageous statement. Like, drink less, you'll probably feel better and you'll get closer to your goals. I don't think that's crazy at all.
And that can go with anything that's not great for you, though. Smoking less marijuana, you're going to do better. And, you know, maybe not even as much physically, maybe with lung capacity, but things like, again, the mental aspect, right? You can train harder for longer. You can focus on your sets better. Your form will get better. But, yeah, things like that, smoking, anything like that. Anything that's not good for you, if you do less of it, and whether that's like a tiny little amount of performance, but over 10 years, that tiny little amount turns into a lot. Again, it's like if you put $10 a week away, it doesn't feel like a lot, but over 10 years, you've saved almost $5,500.
Well, 5% per year over 10 years. Yeah. It's like massive.
Exactly. Yeah. So like that little performance gain over a long time gives you a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what we just tell people, you know, generally, not all the time, again, like there's always exceptions to the rule. Look at me, I used to drink a lot. But if you are, you know, trying to be the best powerlifter you can be, or just trying to better your life, you will start cutting things out like that. Like, because things like powerlifting, one of the reasons I love it, and strength training is they do make you more health conscious, just by the nature of it, right?
Very true.
You want to take better care of yourself, you want to eat better, so people do cut back on that stuff. But the last month of a comp prep, we tell people, hey, try to limit your drinking. You know, you got some hard sessions coming up, you need to recover. You know, definitely the week of comp. And whether that makes a massive difference, like I've had good comps where I've been drank up into a comp, but I reckon I've had my comps are way better and just more consistent. My big lifts are more consistent since that. And whether that's a mental aspect as well, like a lot of that in the sleep aspect. But yeah, you definitely want to limit those things.
Sleep, huge. You just don't sleep well if you drink a lot.
No. Especially like, you know, you find you like overheat really rapidly in your sleep if you've been drinking a fair bit, just because your liver is trying to get rid of everything. It's like, all right, let's kick this into overdrive, and suddenly you're like sweaty in the middle of the night. It's like gross. I mean,
that happens anyway, but it's
right. I'm sweating on the way here, but still.
I think I'd like, you guys are happy to do it, go into a bit of powerlifting politics now. You guys all right with that?
Yeah, let's do it. This is so great.
This is now something I've posted on my Instagram. I think, Tyler, you've stayed pretty quiet throughout it. Just like, you know, but even, well, I put one thing up about it, right? Like, you know, you can't speak for everyone, but as everyone knows, the USAPL put I guess you could call it a ban on transgender lifters. And, you know, I put one post up about it. It's also not my place. I'm not a transgender athlete. It's not my place to speak. But, you know, we're allowed, like, to have an opinion on it. And, you know, whether you think it's right or everyone, you know, has different outlooks on it. And I think that's really important, as long as it's done in a respectful manner as well, especially. But in the end, the people it does affect. Something my coach said is, the people it affects, it doesn't affect me or you. It affects transgender athletes. Like, so, you know, a lot of it needs to be left up to them. And, you know, you need to listen to them and what they have to say about it. But it's something we did want to touch on today. And the reason is, when I put a post up about it, I talked to Sam Hall a lot about it. And you had some really good takes on it. And not so much as this is a solution, but you didn't offer a solution, which I don't think you can, right? But also, I think what you said that stuck with me really well, really strongly, and I hope I'm not taking words out of your mouth here, but you said complicated situations deserve complicated solutions. And that's something like no one would really just put it that way. Like there's going to be no, you know, bread and butter way to get around this. Like, is that a saying? Bread and butter way?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Australia. Like, you can just make shit up.
Yeah, true. And we get what you're saying.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, how good is that? It is. But definitely, there's, you know, everyone's trying to look for. And people know, if you've been on my Instagram, you know what I think about it, right? But people are just trying to look for, this is the solution. When, well, in reality, you can't do that. There's no straight down the line. There's no black and white solution to this. Like, I'm going to let you take the lead on this. Now that I've had
sure. So, I mean, I think everybody has this kind of knee-jerk reaction to want to bring order to things that we don't understand. Like, and that's with literally everything we see on a day-to-day basis. Your brain is always trying to order things. As it's the same way, like, I don't mean this in a reductionist or patronizing way, but your brain is hardwired to bring order to something if you don't necessarily understand or can't process what you are seeing directly. And a lot of what we base our, I guess, like our ideas off of, particularly in relation to men and women, is like binary. Like everything we look at in the universe is binary. It's either black or white, love or hate, man or woman. Woman is defined as everything that is not man, vice versa. And I mean, that's essentially how we get by, and that's how like things survive when something is very simple. Like, you know, you can just keep going through it and it's very easy and it's very manageable and everything fits nicely into these boxes. But we're in 2019 now, and I think socially everybody's starting to discover that not everything is binary anymore, nor should it be. I'm not saying that those definitions are you know, really how things should be. I think that is how things have been for a very long time. And we're now finding that we have to create a lot of this grey space for people to accommodate people. So I don't think it's like, I absolutely don't think it's okay for anyone to simply like blanket ban people, you know, like transgendered people based on the fact that we don't currently have a social space to accommodate them. Like, that was not the right way to go about it. Now, I have no idea what the right way is to go about it. Like, I do not know. But I certainly know that, like, number one, it's going to have to come from discussion and, like, discourse with transgendered people. Like, they're the people it directly affects, like you said. So they're going to have to be the people that we look to start developing some kind of answer. But at the same time, you know, can we immediately expect there to be a solution? Like, I don't necessarily agree at the same time with this idea. Like, I don't agree with the blanket banning, but I don't think that this idea on the opposite end of the spectrum, like blanket let everybody in, is a solution either. Like, I think there has to be something in between that's going to take a little bit more time, that's going to take a little bit more discourse. And I think knee-jerk reactions from either end of the spectrum are not the way to solve it. Like, it's not the way to go about it. Like, do people deserve their right to be represented? Absolutely. It's just going to take some time for us to be able to develop that space.
I think just you had a really, like, you know, we need to be able to talk about it, right? Yep. On that. And I think that's what people don't realise. So I remember going on the Reddit Power thing because there's a big post about it and reading through it. And all, like, the vast majority of people were just like, no, you're just transphobic for not letting, you know, just banning them and even suggesting that there needs to be an alternative. You're transphobic. And then I was really surprised. I remember talking to Tyler. I lost a few followers from it when I put mine up. All I said was, if you're not happy to, what did I say? I was like, if you're not happy to find a better solution, then you don't have an issue with transgender people in Palestine, you've got an issue with transgender people, right? Mm-hmm. But I found a lot of my story, and I got a lot of hate in my DMs, and they were from people on the opposite end, were just like, no, just ban them, right? So I think what's happening is everyone's automatically putting their guard up. Everyone, as soon as a topic comes up, nobody's actually being able to talk freely about it without getting attacked from people on opposing sides, right? When what really needs to happen is we need to have an open, you know, discussion on it, and people need to feel like they're not going to have their career ended, they're not going to be shamed. You know, as long as you're not doing it in an aggressive way, you're not just saying, hey, fuck transgender people, and you like, which happens a lot. But what happens is, I hope no one just cuts that and uploads that. But you know, people need to feel safe in offering different solutions, and at the moment that's not the case. But that's on either end. Because straight away it turns into this thing: you're either transphobic or you're not, and that nobody's allowing just an open discussion about it without personally attacking the other person's beliefs. So if I say so, for me, you know, I thought like a good way. Sorry to cut you off. It's just like, but I thought a good way or a potential way. Not saying this has to be the be all and end all. Would be like, look, if you're a transgender athlete, compete with the gender you identify as, but just in you know, we've already got two classes. You got male, female. Why not add trans male, trans female, transgender, and and then but compete alongside cisgender women and men, and then you just podium separately, right?
Because
you can't say that,
Yeah.
because people automatically go, "You're transphobic," because you're saying.
Well, yeah, because I mean,
Can I push back a little bit here?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say the same thing.
I'll push back. So, and going back to what you originally said about how, like, okay, so you can't put a blanket ban, like, because that's not fair. We're about equality, you know, in our society. But at the same time, and this is where the pushback is I do not agree with biological men becoming women and then kicking the shit out of women, or, you know, beating women, all their records, and destroying women on the track or the UFC ring or whatever it is, because it is an unfair advantage. And we're in drug tested federation right now because we don't want people to have an unfair advantage.
So to counter that, the Olympics has allowed transgender athletes for like quite some time. I think since 2004, Athens, 2004. And in that time, no transgender athlete has podiumed.
Okay.
I'm fairly sure.
Right.
No transgender athlete has
Pull
podiumed.
shit up, Jamie.
Yeah. So you might or if they have podiums, and forgive me if I'm getting my information wrong, I do apologize, but they certainly haven't broken any existing records within that gender class.
Yeah,
so
okay.
I think the idea on paper is like, yeah, that like I can see that, but then I still think it's maybe not as clear cut as that, like,
of course,
because
of course.
there is evidence
like,
from the
just
Olympics.
Just because you go a man to a woman doesn't mean you're going to beat all women in whatever sport or whatever it is. But if we look at cases recently, so you look at the AFL. There's the transgender in the AFL. I think they play for the Bulldogs, the female Bulldogs. Yeah, is that the name? And
sure.
There's a clear advantage, you know, on the field with there. Then there's the one the other day with the sprinters, where the two transgender athletes podiumed first and second. And
yeah, it's a high school sprinting.
Yeah, it's in high school sprinting. So it's like, it does happen.
Yeah.
And then when it does happen, it's like, it's to an extreme level.
I think the other thing, though, is someone actually had a conversation. So again, you know, it's very clear where I stand. You shouldn't just be banning people or anything.
Yeah.
It's not fair. Like, everyone deserves a fair shot. It's not fair to go, your transgender drug-tested powerlifting isn't for you just because you are on hormones to an extent. Like, you just can't throw someone out for that. Like, you need to cater for this and like give everyone a fair chance. Like, you know, we don't know what the solution is yet, but also something that this person pointed out, we were having a conversation, and she said something that really just made sense, and I hadn't thought of it in this way yet, and not that she had to sway my opinion or anything, but it's a good argument, is that it's so easy to cherry pick specific cases.
Oh yeah.
Right? So it's so easy to go, hey, here's 5, transgender athletes that have beaten cis women, or like, cis women. Here's 5, but you don't hear about all the other athletes that aren't at that level. So it's very easy to cherry pick as well. Like, and I think it's just going to be careful of that. Is like, of course you're going to be able to find, situations where transgender athletes are winning and they are going above and beyond, but you can find like situations where anyone's doing that, right? Where cis women are just dominating everyone else in their class as well. Like, if you look at, who's that tennis player? What's her name? She's really good. They're sisters?
The Williams
Serena.
sisters? Serena Williams?
Yeah. Like, and they're just above and beyond everyone else. Like,
Yeah.
So, like, I think people need to be careful of just going, it shouldn't be allowed because this, and then they cherry pick a few cases, and then that's all I'm saying here is that I think it's very important that you don't get caught, because of course it's going to get advertised, because for most people it's a new thing, and but all these cases are cherry picked. You don't see all, say, use powerlifting example. You don't see all the transgender powerlifters that aren't up in the top and podiuming and doing really well. Nobody talks about them because it doesn't support their argument.
Because and a big part of that is because genetics still come into it. So if you've got a girl who's been training for 10 years, has amazing genetics for example, powerlifting, she's going to be better than most average performing men who switch to becoming a woman. So that's what you're talking about in that case, where they're never going to end up being like first, for example, because they were never the best in terms of being.
They're not going to get to the podium by virtue of
just because they just switched gender, and that's a perfect example.
I think that's the assumption people make, though.
Right.
And I think that's where it gets really bad. Is people just make that assumption that, you see it all the time online. People go, if I decided to transition, I would be the best. Well, no, you probably wouldn't. Like, you're not going to go benching 140, transitioning, and then go bench 140 in a month. Like,
yeah, you're probably still that same dude eating Cheetos on the couch, man. Like,
you're not
going
like
to be
100%.
better.
And I think that's the thing is I think it's a really, like, it's an argument a lot of people want to use, and in their head it justifies it, when in reality it doesn't.
It's not a justification to ban them. That's why it's a justification of being like, hey, okay, we need its own division, because you cannot put them like.
Well, okay.
So if you have the high level male and high level female, so they're both equivalent level in terms of, you figure out your Wilks, equivalent level in terms of their field, their gender, and then the female, so the male becomes a female. Transitions, and then they're most likely now going to beat everybody in that other field because they were on the top of their level, and then they have a biological advantage. And we can all agree here, a full-grown male, does have a biological advantage over a female just because of their build, like all the biological aspects that come to their bodies are just built stronger.
Man, I'm getting nervous.
Yeah, there's an unfair advantage. Like I said, okay, you put me and Casey in the ring together. Like it's so unfair. Like it's just not like I don't think it's fair that women should have to verse biological men. Though obviously they've transitioned to become female. That's not fair on them. And even and so in the cases where they're not going to win because they were just say like an average performing male and they become a female, that doesn't take away from the point that they could have potentially been better than all the women though. So we're not saying to ban them completely, of course not.
No, I mean,
but there is
absolutely
a clear biological advantage.
I mean, that's what I'm really saying is like, it's complex. Like, I don't have a solution for it. I don't even have any suggestions for solutions. All I really take umbrage with is the people that seem to immediately jump into the absolutes of the argument when, by definition, this argument is not a black and white argument.
No.
It's very complex. I think that comes down to what I was saying before, though. People need to be able to have an open discussion about it, but without then bringing hate or prejudice into it, right? I think that's the important thing here is a lot of the people, not even a lot, let's say, all right, a fair few people, though, are going to come into that with this prejudice already, going, no, like, they're just going to have a clear advantage. Like, and what needs to happen is there needs to be, like, an open platform for it, for people to have this discussion in a respectful way, but also very inclusive of, like, there's no point, and we wanted to talk about this, it's been a big issue in powerlifting, and, we wanted to do it in a respectful way, but also that discussion needs to involve, as many transgender athletes that are willing and comfortable talking about it as well, right? Because you can't have cis men and cis women making the decision for someone else.
Well, it also, like, it has to be reflective of what's going on in society at large.
100%. I agree entirely.
Yeah,
makes sense.
So if society is still struggling with the idea, which it very much is, because, like, in terms of, like, the evolution of society, it's still a pretty new idea. Until, like, we as a society at large can start to come to better terms with exactly what's going on and start to open up those dialogues. And, like, I mean, powerlifting's really not going to be the place where it gets solved. I think it'll just, like, evolve over time. And
but here's the thing, like, as well, you see a lot, the Olympics has allowed, what you said, since about 2004,
I'm fairly sure.
Like, I feel like, if they're doing it, well, they've done the research. Like, it's a pretty big, like, it's like, it is the be-all and end-all for sport.
Yeah.
For, like, amateur sport, right, representing your country, because you can't be professional in the Olympics. But it's like, the Olympics are, with testing and everything, like, if they're doing the studies and saying, actually, there is no clear performance benefit, well, I think that needs to be taken on board as well.
Yeah. I think also, like, we're presupposing that, let's say for the male to female transition argument, that a male powerlifter is then going to become a female powerlifter. Like, I think, like, we're like, a lot of that presupposes the idea that a male would do that to gain a competitive edge in the first place, which is not the reason why people are transitioning. That is not why people are transitioning.
That's an argument people put forward, and it's just it's a non-argument. No, you're just looking for a reason to then reaffirm what you believe, right? You're
and
just
like,
looking for a reason to be like, no,
it's a blanket ban. It's not actually
Yeah.
looking into the complexity of the situation.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's the thing. People like to throw that out there because it's ridiculous. Like,
That's exactly, and then
to
to
support
your
argument.
point of how many of these transgender people are transitioned but aren't winning. That's an exact example of people who just want to be who they want to be,
Yeah,
which they can
like
be.
what they identify
You can't
as or
tell
who they
someone how
identify
they
as.
feel or
Yeah.
It's just
what
who
to
they
be.
are.
It's just who they are. It's just the coincidence that if there is a high performing male who becomes a female, they are probably going to kick the shit out of all the females.
Yeah, maybe. Like
Maybe.
when or if the day comes,
Depends,
yeah.
depends
But
on
I
the
also
skill,
think, like,
depends
yeah,
on like all the
Yeah,
other factors of the
like,
sport, like
I
fighting.
think, yeah,
A guy who's never fought
Sam's
before.
visibly uncomfortable.
no, it's not even that. I just think like maybe we should start looking at praising athleticism more over like gender specific athleticism. Like if that person wins, really at the end of the day, like the rule sets are going to have to change. The cultural ideas around the sport and how it views gender are going to have to change, and they're going to have to evolve. But I think at the end of the day, we have to look at it in terms of like athleticism and kind of take the motive out of it and look at it in terms of athleticism. If that person is still committing to dedicating themselves to becoming an athlete for the entirety of their life and they've reached the pinnacle of that sport, then that's something that I'm going to respect.
Well, that's it. You see a lot of people try to use it to take someone's accomplishments away, which just should not be the case at all. Like, do you know, like, what's her name, the weightlifter? She's in all the news. She's New Zealander.
I thought you were talking about Janae Marie Kroc.
No. There's an Olympic weightlifter.
I'm
What's her
not
name?
sure.
And she's doing really well, and people want to take her accomplishments away because she's transgender. They just want to tear her down. And she came second. She didn't win.
Yeah.
But people want to use that to then take away from her accomplishments, which is just not on.
It's
like,
it's all a bit crazy.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna split it. We're gonna split it here, and we're gonna go into the second half where Sam's gonna get into some training science and stuff like that. We'll see what comes of that. So thanks for watching, and you can watch the rest of this one next week.
Good cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I need a